Everyone's just trying to learn. No one has all the answers. And for better or worse, there's a remarkably short supply of people who have their own opinions. I just think more people should be welcome, and what they should be welcome to do is love it as closely, as deeply, or as superficially as they want. You can trust your own instincts too. They're valid. Welcome to part two.
Welcome to Vita Brevis, a podcast about business, art, life, and death. I'm your host, Carlos Cardenas. Here we explore how business, creativity, and philanthropy intersect through the lives of remarkable people. I talk with entrepreneurs and community leaders who are passionate collectors and visionary patrons to discover how art shapes their work, purpose, and legacy. Because life is short, but art is forever.
Vita Brevis is here to entertain you. Nothing discussed here should be taken as financial, investment, or legal advice. Views expressed are personal and for general discussion only.
Let's talk a little bit about Instagram here. So, when did you realize you'd cross from becoming like a content producer for a large audience instead of just, a participant in the sort of social media space?
Huh. I've had Instagram for years, but a year and a month ago, I started making videos, and from the second or third video, I could tell it was reaching an audience. If for no other reason, it's not because anything that I was doing was so great or I'm so special. It was just because I realized it was tapping into something that wasn't being done much, if at all. Uh, Both people speaking honestly about ideas about the worlds of art and culture. And also, one of the first videos I made was just a video of me bidding in an auction. And I realized, to my knowledge, that still to this day has never been done by anyone else. And I think there's a reason why, not just in an auction, but also just as far as I know, no significant art market participant in any way has ever shown. I'd say there've been good and interesting articles by both Adam Lindemann and Kenny Schachter, both of whom are are definitely art market participants and interesting writers, and both people I've learned from and think favorably of and appreciate and have been welcoming to me. So I appreciate both of them. But other though than those two people, and maybe I don't know, I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anyone else out, and especially in video form or really seeing how something works. I don't know. I think, for example, Adam Lindemann has written interesting articles about an auction season after it was done in written form, but I don't know if anyone's ever shown their own actual moments of their life participating, uh, at a fairly real level. So I knew immediately that, just by seeing the audience it reached, there was something. Uh, but I've been aware of the power of social media for a while. Just seeing it first. I was in a relationship with someone who was very savvy and smart and successful social media user years ago. I just didn't think it would be me because, um, you know, I'm not beautiful. I'm not a movie star. I wasn't sure, what I had to contribute, and I really enjoyed being private. It didn't surprise me that much that, to be honest, the bigger surprise was that I made a video at all with me on it than that anyone was interested in it, because it surprised me that I was scared to do it, and I was embarrassed, uh, and really I think the only thing that kept me going was that I'd thought of doing this for quite a while, but like many things in my life, I just kept putting it off because of fear of failure, embarrassment, humiliation, whatever else, and so I just never began, and I told myself, "Listen, I'm about to go to Art Basel, I gotta just start now. I'm gonna just no matter what, I'm gonna start something." So, I started and I figured, "Well, what should I do? I guess I'll cover Art Basel," because I was still thinking of it as a sort of from a kind of, like, journalistic way, and I thought, "Well, maybe I'll go around and interview people at Art Basel, I'll do man on the street sorts of things." So, I did a few videos like that, and then I also did one of me just sitting. I just was sitting at a table. I happened to be inside Art Basel, but I was just, eating eating a sandwich or something, or I think I was eating a pork bun, and I was just ranting about different ideas about, uh, who could be included in the world of art, and it wasn't really very well said or particularly articulate. It wasn't well lit. It wasn't there was nothing really good about it. And even so, not only did that video perform much better audience-wise than my man on the street coverage things, but also every single person I saw afterwards said, "Oh, it's interesting the video stuff you're doing." And I said, "Do you like it?" And they'd all say to me, to be honest, the coverage stuff, I think who needs it? I like the one where you talk. Why don't you just talk? Because I realize at the end of the day, there's plenty of good art journalism, but I'm not a journalist, so to me, I try to cover things, but I think that's what kept me going is realizing for better or worse, if I was gonna make videos, I have to put myself in them because I have nothing else to offer.
Let's talk about a recent post that I saw. I think this was just yesterday or the day before. You made a post about the idea of taste as a luxury. And I love this quote. I think it's attributed to Picasso, but it's probably off. Something about taste is the enemy of culture, which I always really, really liked. And the idea is that taste is a product of convention and consensus, right? It's almost like a socially constructed velvet rope that's meant to sort of validate and protect, the gatekeepers, the sort of bourgeoisie of the art world. And I personally avoid talking about taste as much as possible, for the aforementioned reasons. But tell us about this post and the example that you brought up in that post.
Yeah, part of what I try to do is, I feel like it's boring to just repeat other people's ideas or to make, arguments that someone might expect. I always think of a friend of mine who I knew in music, really brilliant guy, but he had a knack for, making aphorisms even when he didn't mean to. But I remember sitting with him in a concert of a band that everyone loved, and there was a trumpet player, I think, and he said, "Look, ready? You're gonna be able to guess each note he plays. Right before he plays a note, you know just what note he's gonna play." So, and to him, that's that was the opposite of making interesting music, is if everyone knows what note you're gonna play, it's not worth listening. So I try to take things a different, maybe contrarian direction, even just to surprise people. So the social theorist that I highlighted is a woman named Addison Rae, who's a now a pop star, former TikTok star, and not someone that, partly through the kind of conventional sexism, not, probably very few media outlets would have called a, cultural theorist. They would have described her in kind of more gendered, demeaning terms. But she's saying something really interesting, which is, they asked her, "Why did you start with TikTok?" And what she said is, taste is a luxury. One of the things that I've noticed is when I put ideas out there, especially in a format like social media, because people are seeing it fast and while they're scrolling and stuff, some people get the idea and agree, some people get the idea and really disagree, but a whole lot of people just haven't managed to don't listen long enough to even process what the content of the thing is, and then they agree or disagree even though it's not really what the content is, which is fine, you know what I mean? And just you have to kind of be okay with it. But really what she's trying to say is that the the luxury of being able to express your taste just how you want isn't available to everyone. So she might have made really sophisticated experimental music, but that wasn't, what she had available to her was she could dance, she could make, she didn't have, she was a random young person in Louisiana in a college dorm. What she made was TikToks, and she made them to get an audience quickly so that she could get out of that place and get to the next phase of her career. And now she's making music that a lot of people seem to really love and even think of as very meaningful, very tasteful music. But to me, how that's relevant to, I mean, there's many ways it's relevant to the world of art, including who can afford to be an artist, who can afford to stay a professional artist when it's so hard to make a living, and so on and so on. Those are luxuries not available to everyone, or who can afford to be tasteful in the New York art world. Certainly, it's not everyone living in third world countries, for example. They just don't have that luxury. So there's probably so much great art being made around the world by people that don't have the luxury of exposure or being considered tasteful because they're, in Afghanistan or wherever. But beyond that, even I think it also just is worth mentioning. If we're talking about the world of collecting, always the limiting factor is budget. So in terms of how we express our taste, and that makes it really different than, what your playlist is on Spotify. And the example I always give is I remember I had this, apartment with a lot of art on the wall, and people would come over and say, "Whoa, having conversations with people that are not familiar with this world as someone who was not familiar with it not that long ago myself. So I'd have, invite a friend over and they're not part of the art world and they'd sort of take it all in and say, wow, a lot of art, huh? And I'd say, yeah. And sometimes people would say, huh, so these are the artists you think are the best artists in the world, huh? And of course, what I said is definitely not. These are definitely not the artists that I think are the best artists in the world. These are the things that I managed to afford. The limiting factor, I'd love to have a great Kerry James Marshall painting. I'd love to, but I can't afford it. My first favorite artist is Francis Bacon, but I don't own a Francis Bacon. But other people say, huh, but how I choose to express my taste is I really like to buy very uncommercial art, and I've made a museum for video art, and I find that's very tasteful. And I think, that's cool. Nice for nice for you. But that's not a way of expressing your taste that is available to almost everyone. I'm still glad that those people did it, but it's worth remembering that the main limiting factor for expressing your taste that way is the luxury in this case of wealth and time. There are also lots of people out there. It's also worth reminding people just how time intensive getting into collecting is. And I think sometimes people forget that because they're used to dealing with people who are so engaged with art, it's almost like a full-time job. Like I'm tremendously engaged with art and so I'm aware of all the different shows and I do my research and I learn about stuff. A lot of people just don't have the time. Even people that are very successful, they think how would I manage to stay on top of all this stuff? There's just so much, not just to know about all the art, but then to jump through all the hoops that it takes to get to actually be offered something from a gallery. It's really expecting that someone has massive financial and time resources. And so that means the ability to express your taste that way is a luxury that very few have. And that's just worth noting out loud.
I know that your collection spans old masters, some mid century artists, work from the 80s, and contemporary work. So tell me what's the sort of thread that connects all of the work from these different eras? Because, there's centuries between them.
The biggest thread is just what I love and what's really speak to me and what moves me. And I really believe that a lot of the categories I'm a firm believer that all the categories that divide art and people are arbitrary, in the same way that I think the divide between who's a collector, who's a dealer, who's an artist, who's a curator are all quite arbitrary and many people are in multiple categories. There's some amazing gallerists who are artists, there are amazing artists who are amazing collectors, and so on and so on. Even you can see that especially in fields like Old Masters. When people are wondering who are making great Old Masters collections, some of the people are artists. For example, Jeff Koons has an
Yeah.
amazing collection of
Hmm.
19th and 18th century art. So all those divides are arbitrary, and I even think the divides between different categories are arbitrary. And even that, I'm a big believer that art from different eras can live well with each other if the artworks live well to each other. So I'd say these are all things that speak to me. I tend to like art that's really visceral and that moves me, uh, and and I tend to gravitate to art that I feel like has something to say emotionally or politically or societally, but I tend to gravitate to art that moves me to ideas, not just art that is a comment on other art. Uh, there's nothing wrong with art that's a kind of inward comment um, on other art, but that's not been my focus, and I think of it in relation to other art forms that, like I always thought in music that one of the big divides is there's music that is kind of ambient background music, and there's music that just grabs you out of your seat, like going to MoMA for the first time and seeing a Francis Bacon painting, and it just was like a lightning bolt in my skull. That's the kind of art that I've always liked.
Thank you for listening to Vita Brevis. If you know someone who would enjoy this conversation, please share it with them. A follow or review also goes a long way in helping us grow. Thank you. And remember, life is short, but art is forever.
Well, I think you just answered my next question. I was going to ask, do you look for art that challenges you or soothes you or something else entirely? Maybe it depends on your mood.
That's a good question. Yeah, I'd say both. The two things I'll add, I mean, of course, people always say buy what you love, and so yeah, I mean, looking for things that that I love. Sometimes I've loved things that challenged me at first, and then I come to love them more. But so it's not always things that I find easy. In fact, I like a lot of art that maybe is one of the comments people give the most. They're like, "You really have that in your bedroom?" I don't know if I that's so I don't mind stuff that's jarring and tough and visceral in different ways, or making you know powerful but painful political commentary. Another thing that I believe strongly is that even though art is totally subjective and everyone deserves a chance to try to be an artist, and we should support more, that supporting the arts more is great for society, that doesn't mean that I don't also believe that that at least I want to be, and to me, the sign of someone who's good at this, whatever this is I'm relentlessly searching for and evaluating quality. That quality is totally subjective, but that doesn't mean that every painting is just as good as every other painting. I don't believe that, you know,
Mm.
and I don't believe in just sort of like, yeah, just buy art and just buy whatever, even if you don't like it or don't think it's that good. A lot of what I mean, I think that as someone who both makes art in different media than this and collects it and evaluates it, I think it's important to stress that when you're making it, you should not have to think about how good it is or what anyone else thinks of it. You should be able to create and follow your inspiration. And when I'm writing something, it's really important that I'm not thinking about what an editor or whether Carlos will think that I'm embarrassing myself or anything else. You should be able to create and let yourself fail and let yourself experiment and try things that go nowhere. That's part of the creative process. On the other hand, when things are made, I'm fully expecting that the things I make, and it's easy, videos are a good example. My things go on social media, and immediately some people say this is crap. Some people say I hate this guy. Some people say this sucks. Some people say I love it. Some people say it to a friend. Some people scroll past it. It's being evaluated in real time immediately, and that's just part of it. And people can and should be evaluating it. So I think it's really important to say, you know, I strive for a collection that as much as possible is made up of art that I think isn't just nice or by artists that I like. To me, that's the sign of, and I say it's worth putting it out there because all the time people almost are trying to kind of trot out the idea that being an art collector is just buying stuff. And they're like, oh, look at so and so and so and so. They bought a lot of stuff. That's just buying stuff. So I'd say there's that. And then I guess the one other thing I'd add is that um, if there's another commonality to the fields of art that I've been interested in, I'm interested in the places that other people are not interested in. I wanna go where people are not going, or where the majority of the masses that would drive price and competition are not going. So, uh so that's the commonality of why I started with collecting things that were very new. Is the same actually the same reason why I then also added collecting some other things, they're very old. Both because I like them, both because I thought I was able to find artworks that I love that are also of really high quality, but also because when I started buying art by people that were my age, that was the place that I could fit in because I didn't have I wasn't a big dog in the, like, Monet field or Impressionism or Rothko or whatever. I didn't I couldn't get in those places, and that's where, really, like, in, 2012 and whatever, in those kinds of times, 2008, 2014 even, really there was the most competition for a, great George Condo, a great Jeff Koons. Those were the places with competition, and discovering new artists was a place that I could have a chance to fit in. But since then, what happened is that got cannibalized by every single person and their cousin are now trying to find, grab, push their way into, represent, speculate on whatever brand new artists. And that's the place with the most competition still to this day. It's worth saying out loud that, back in a decade ago, uh, people would come out of school and stuff and to try to get into art, and some people might be like an impressionist and modern prints dealer, or I specialize in Latin American modernism, whatever. Now, every single person every single person without exception who goes into art and opens a new business, they're people that still go to work at Sotheby's or go to work at Gagosian, but every single person that opens a new enterprise opens an emerging gallery to represent emerging artists. Every single person. All there is endless, endless, endless new emerging galleries. And if you notice, there are like very few. For example, I just went to a exhibition of a Guido Reni painting at Adam Williams Gallery, where basically this is like a painting that comes around once in a lifetime. It was a David with the head of Goliath, and it went to instead of being shown at anywhere else in the world when it was in New York, where it had a viewing, was it at Adam Williams Fine Art, which is an old master dealer with the gallery. And I said to Patrick Williams, who's more like my age. He's the co-owner of the business and Adam Williams' son. I said, "Wow, it's pretty amazing for you guys. This is an impressive moment to have, to be the one chosen to do this." And he looked at me and said, we're one of the only galleries. They're just not really there aren't really, there are 10,000 emerging art galleries, and in terms of old masters galleries with a physical space, there are almost none to show you the size of those worlds. So partly, I'm always looking for the fields where I can fit in, and it's partly because, um, I'm curious, it's partly because 'cause I'm bored by hype and blah, 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 and people say this kind of stuff in ways that are self-congratulatory, like, sometimes people that always go to underserved fields when asked about it, they're like, "Well, I've always been on the side of the underdog. And, what can I say? I've always been a contrarian thinker." Maybe some of those things are true, but the biggest reason is to bring it back to the kind of if we're talking about art and business, the reason that got me actually not just thinking about old master painting, but also buying one is I could not believe how affordable they are. It was a chance to buy something really great that I could afford because with, for example, like mid-century art, there are amazing, even pretty well-known artists that have somehow shockingly affordable work. Like I bought a great John Altoon painting. He's actually a
Mhm.
really well-known, really influential artist of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and yet actually his work is really affordable. But for the most part, the giants of the 50s, 60s, 70s, their artworks are just unaffordably expensive. Whereas artists of equal stature from the 1650s and even, 1560s are a fraction of the price. And so that meant I could have a chance to build a really, really satisfying high quality in my own eyes collection in a way that I could afford. So it just, it's worth pointing out to anyone listening. If anyone tells you, don't think about which areas to get into that you can afford, don't listen to them. It's a chance to, really look around and see not just what you're into, but also what you can afford. And if you are into an area, like for example, you've always loved Rothko and you want to get into collecting art and you realize it's way too expensive, don't let that be a reason to not collect art. There's so many different fields and areas. You just gotta look around a bit. There are many, many fields with amazing artworks that you can buy. I mean, not for free, not for but for example, in Old Masters, I'll close it. I mean, I'll close this topic at this. Now people send me all the Old Masters stuff, just any links, friends of mine, and there's a young woman who I don't know at all. She's a director of I don't think I've ever met her, but she's a director of a very contemporary gallery. She posted online a picture of her kids', like playroom or something, or like a room in her house with her kids' toys and stuff. And above it, she had a Dutch Golden Age painting, not a etching, not a print, but like a real deal by artist I'd heard their name before, Dutch Golden Age painting. And I was thinking, wow, sales are good at that gallery, huh? She's buying like Dutch Golden Age paintings and hanging them in the living room. And I looked it up. She bought it at Sotheby's. She paid something like $1,400.
Oh,
So you can buy in all these fields, you can buy, it turns out actually buying Old Masters was much more affordable than buying the program of emerging artists that she represents. So it's, people don't realize that. But so it's all to say there's, the more you look, the more you do your research and ask people that know, there are many places to collect uh, at all levels, all fields. And a lot of it's just finding areas that have opportunity for you.
talking about different kinds of exhibition venues, I know that you just opened a public exhibition space in Mexico City. Tell us about that, why you did it, and what you're hoping to achieve there.
Uh, Yeah, thanks for asking. It's called Cuernavaca Tres, Cuernavaca number 3, and it's in La Condesa, Mexico City. It's a public exhibition space and public art collection. It's going to do a few different things. It's going to start with a show of my own collection. and it'll be open to the public, host events, have parties, have even just during Zona Mako week, there's a party and an opening, there's a breakfast. The idea is to kind of share some of the art that I've collected with a wider audience, uh, and also in the same way that I hope to bring more people to art and art to more people. I even think of that with my relationship with Mexico City, and Mexican art. I'm not Mexican, but I've this project is a collaboration with Carlos Zadillo Velasco, who's a great architect based in Mexico City and a longtime friend, and uh, and we have different relationships to the broader. He's from there. I'm not. We have different connections to the broader world of art. He's built several art exhibition spaces that are have both local and international audiences, and in the same way that I wanna bring more people to art and art to more people, I collect a lot of art both from the history of Mexico and by contemporary Mexican and Mexican American artists. So to me, I thought it was interesting to both bring an international audience to Mexico City and to these Mexican artists, but also, in the same way, to bring a lot of art from other places and open it because most of the year, the audience will be primarily, I'd imagine, visitors, local people. During the art fair week, there's a lot of people that come internationally, but just on an everyday basis, there'll be a lot of people that come locally, but there'll be art, hopefully of a very high quality, of a museum quality, stretching from the 1500s to the present. And so I want to share that with people who want to see it for free.
Congratulations. It's super cool that you're doing that. I want to try something new here. I haven't done this yet. Some rapid fire questions. Greatest historical commercial gallery. Historical.
How about two-part? I'd say the obvious one is Leo Castelli, but also special mention for Gavin Brown Gallery, I guess is now a historical gallery, and I think what he did, and especially his relation to, I'll just say, that's a historical gallery now that I've always admired.
Oh, there's Sturdivant. Amazing artist was there. Laura
Yeah.
Owens. I
Yeah.
mean, this goes on and on. How does the art market stay relevant for the next 36 months, especially as objects are increasingly superseded by digital engagement?
It needs to find a way to bring in more participants and bring costs down for everyone who's involved, galleries and auction houses and everyone that's involved in selling art, so that the the prices can come down. That's, I think, one sentence answer. I Just one person's opinion, but I believe that as in a short term, the best short term solution to anything negative that's going on in the art market is let more people in and bring prices down.
What do you hope changes?
I hope that in a few years, many more people, especially younger people and people from different backgrounds, will feel welcome to be part of the world of loving and collecting art.
What do you hope doesn't change?
The fact that their serious engagement, deep looking and deep learning about art. I know this maybe what makes it less rapid fire, but I'll say quickly, sometimes people conflate my sort of inclusivity and populism with easiness or superficial engagement with art. I think that many more people should be included, but I also think we should continue to encourage people to go deep with art, to learn more about it, to seek out art that is challenging to them, uh, and and approach it with deep love and study and connoisseurship. I just think many more people should get the chance to do that. But I don't think that means art has to pander to the lowest common denominator. I just think more people should be welcome, and what they should be welcome to do is love it as closely, as deeply, or as superficially as they want.
What do you want your legacy to be?
One thing that I've noticed is that in the times that people have come up to me who I don't know, who are strangers, and said something to me, I haven't minded it, and I think it's partly because the more that I say and do things that I stand behind, the more I don't mind. I'm not worried about how people think or talk about me or even talk to me. Uh, so I hope that while I'm alive, people engage with my ideas, and all I can do is continue to learn and continue to put them out there, and it'll be up to everyone else what they think of me.
What do you say to people outside the art world curiously looking in?
One thing I think is that one reason why you don't need to be intimidated is because if you're worried that you don't know enough or you don't know everything, one reason to rest assured is really no one knows anything. You know, one of the things that I've been surprised, continue to be surprised by, is just how much no one really knows anything. Everyone's just trying to learn. No one has all the answers, and even there's a for better or worse, there's a remarkably short supply of people who have their own opinions. Even a lot of insiders are really just parroting things that have been said to them very
Huh.
confidently, and that can be intimidating because, uh you say, "Oh, I love this, this show," and they say, "Oh, really? Only the 2013 works are really the excellent ones. And actually, after 2020," and you think, "Oh God, I don't know all the things that I'm supposed to know." But those people don't know anything either. So I think it's you can come in, you can learn, but also while you learn, you can trust your own instincts too. They're valid.
Jeff Magid, thank you for taking the time to speak with Vita Brevis today.
It's a pleasure. I really like what you're doing, and I appreciate you reaching out to me. It's a cool thing.